Hello, students. Welcome back to another educational segment of Course College Cooking. Today, we are back at the desk to discuss some scientific concepts of cooking and baking that I have learned this fall through my food science, health, and nutrition class. As you all know, I love baking, which is why it is important to me to understand the concepts to know how to be successful. To start, one of my favorites that I have learned about in this class is the Maillard reaction. It is often confused with caramelization, but it is responsible for my favorite texture and taste, the golden brown crunch. It's a chemical reaction that occurs when enough heat is applied to a substance that contains both carbohydrates as well as proteins. This allows it to bring out the color, flavor, and aroma of that foodstuff. The specific example we used in class was French fries, as the Maillard reaction occurs when the potatoes are added to the oil at a temperature higher than 284 degrees Fahrenheit. Next, I'm going to talk a little about sourdough starters and the process known as wild fermentation. Now, I love a good sourdough roll, and I'm hoping to divulge in some over Thanksgiving break. My grandma has had a sourdough starter for longer than I can remember, and thanks to this class, I now know the science behind it. Sourdough starters are an active colony of wild yeast and good bacteria from both the environment, as well as the flour in combination with water, allowing the mix to ferment. Wild fermentation itself occurs when naturally presenting organisms mix with said environment and ingredients. This is why each batch of bread with a different starter can taste slightly different than the one previously made, as the community of microbes are unique to each batch. Another concept I hold near and dear to my heart is pasteurization. Being from an area full of dairy cows, I am quite familiar with this concept and have been my whole life. Pasteurization is the process of heating milk at a high temperature to kill or slow down the growth of any microorganisms present to make it safe to consume. As drinking straight from the udder, as they say, is not the best way to consume milk healthfully. We learned a little about pasteurization in the cheese unit in the 101 class, and it was one of my favorite lessons. Finally, we're getting into some baking concepts to familiarize yourself with. Now, personally, I like a tall, soft cookie rather than a flat, crunchy one. And to get my desired results, I need to make sure I use the correct leavening agents with my flour. Leavening agents are ingredients that cause a baked good to rise, such as yeast, baking soda, and baking powder. Now, when I was younger, I absolutely did not know the difference between baking soda and baking powder, so I'm going to tell you what I've learned. Both baking soda and baking powder are chemical leavening agents that release carbon dioxide gas during baking. This allows the dessert that you're making to increase in size and make it less dense. Baking soda is a base and requires an acid such as lemon juice or vinegar to react to create the leavening in baking, while baking powder is a mixture of baking soda and a dry acid such as cream of tartar, and it creates leavening the minute it gets wet. Lastly, on the leavening note, we're going to be talking about a mechanical type of leavening, such as creaming, or one of the main reasons you can't throw all your ingredients in a bowl and mix it all together at the same time. Creaming is the process of mixing softened butter and sugar in a way that forms small bubbles in the mixture. As the two ingredients are beaten, the sugar cuts into the butter, which allows those bubbles to incorporate air into the dough, allowing it to puff up in the oven. Similarly, beating eggs allows air to get in the dough, and aerating that dough results in a fluffier dough as well. So, with that being said, those instructions attached to your recipe are more important for a reason if you're not getting the result you're looking for. Then I would recommend you reconsult those steps and make sure you're following them to a T, as baking and cooking are complex sciences, and it is important to understand the concepts behind them to get the result you're looking for. This has been a short episode of Chorus College Cooking. Thank you guys for hanging around. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you next week back in the kitchen. See ya.